Okay, go ahead.
All right, well, we're just up from the Tracor site, now the BAE Systems, and we were driving by and we noticed this abandoned small strip shopping center, and you know, it seems to be quite evocative of what we're anticipating of sort of the material world falling apart in this sort of near future dystopia. And so Jason wanted to get some footage, and if we went into the space, and it's clearly sort of a skater hangout. They've got a lot of construction stuff in there, ramps and, you know, old chairs and stuff hanging out. And, you know, one of the things that it reminded me of when I was first starting to get a handle on augmented reality was, like I had looked into it in education, and then right around maybe less than a year later, the Pokemon Go craze hit. And at that time, there was an essay that I read that essentially was sort of laying out text that had talked about ethics in virtual reality and the metaverse, and that was something that people who had been occupying these spaces, digital spaces, for a while had been thinking about. And so it was directing people to different resources. And one of the resources that was suggested in this essay was Vernor Vinge's 2006 science fiction novel called Rainbow's End. And I reference it a lot in my talks, and you know, I find it really important. It actually won the Hugo Award the following year for the best sci-fi novel. And Vinge is interesting because he is a professor emeritus of math and computer science at the University of San Diego. And in I think 1993, he actually was the person who presented this idea of the singularity. And the idea that like what that singularity would look like when the machines attained sort of generalized artificial intelligence, that the machines gained some sort of sentience apart from humans, and what that would be like. And so this book, Rainbow's End, was essentially a world in the not too distant future that was an augmented reality world. And it was set in San Diego, where he's from, which is also the center of a lot of the Navy projects and nanotechnology and computing efforts. And in this world, people would wear in quotes, and you would have augmented contacts and augmented clothing, and essentially through the wearables, you would remake the world in whatever way you wanted to look at it, right? I mean, if you wanted to make this a medieval fortress, you could. If you wanted to make this into, you know, some sort of like anime flight pad, you could. Like, the material elements would be there, but the overlay would change it. And so every person would be experiencing their own reality, which is, on the one hand, maybe could be framed as personally creative, but is also extremely isolating because no one's operating on the same point of reference. And in this world, as a result, the actual material world, it wasn't given any care. It just continued to fall apart and deteriorate. And so they talked about, like, the UC San Diego campus would just essentially be reduced to like airplane hangars, like the most basic kind of architecture, and then people would just project whatever they wanted onto it, and it was all deteriorating. The real world deteriorated at the expense of building the metaverse on top of it, this layer of augmented reality. And so I would just highly recommend that book, and I think this image here somewhat captures that essence of maybe the phasing out of certain aspects of consumer culture and face-to-face economic transactions, maybe as problematic as those were, in favor of e-commerce and on-demand production and delivery via drones and robots to your house, and that you'll never come to a store, and high school kids will never like work at the Hallmark shop, and like what this new world is coming. But in the midst of it, it's actually kind of fascinating, the amount of creativity that's in the decay of all of this, is that nature is rebounding, and even in the space inside, I mean, they're clearly folks have spent a certain amount of time building seating, ramps, using cast-off materials, and this idea that this would be a space for some sort of, you know, sub rosa gathering options, right? And so who knows what this portends for what's coming, but we don't want to pass up the option of taking a minute and sort of lifting up the idea of wearing and Vinge and what the implications are for the real world, and thinking about what comes next.